so much criming, and
So
Trump is
criming.
losing it. The breakdown starts now. Welcome to The Breakdown. I'm Tara Setmayer. This is the Rick Wilson, and woof, we've got a lot of criming stuff to talk about with you guys tonight. It has been a week.
But before we do, can we tell them what's going on?
Yeah.
To quote the political philosopher Britney Spears, oops, we did it again. Over on Truth Social right now, Donald Trump is losing his shit over the Lincoln Project.
Yes,
You're welcome, America.
Yes, you're welcome, Democrats. Yes, and you want to know what he's losing it over? Well, he's losing it over the fact that Rick Wilson and the brilliance of his mind and our creative team here at Lincoln Project put up a little ad called Insider, where we insinuated that, well, maybe somebody snitched on Donald Trump, and that's why the feds got sent to Mar-a-Lago. This was before we found out that there was, in fact, an informant that snitched to send the feds to Mar-a-Lago. So the ad has been running, and it's been seen over 2.6 million times, probably more by now. That was earlier today, all over MSNBC and morning shows.
It's over three. It's over three now.
Over three now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's about to be about 20 now that right. Dipshit von Umberhausen is tweeting about it.
So since he's kicked off of Twitter, he can't comment, but he is commenting over on Truth Social. So let's remind folks of what it is, because this ad is playing in Bedminster, correct? It's airing up there.
It is indeed.
Yes, we'd like to air it.
It's digitally following him and his people around.
Yes.
Anywhere they go.
And it looks like it has finally reached him. And this is what it is. Take a look. Insider.
Who was it, Donald? Who gave you up to the feds? Who squealed? Who told them what you kept in a safe at Mar-a-Lago? No, not that stuff. Disgusting. The classified documents. 15 boxes of top-secret files. That's naughty, Donald. And illegal. You broke the law. No wonder the Department of Justice and the FBI came knocking. They're coming for you. But who leaked? Who sold you out? Was it Jared? Ungrateful. Ivanka? They're backing away from you. Don Jr.? Your own son. Eric? Do you even care? Melania? She wants to escape. Mark Meadows? Who did it? All your old Washington friends are talking to the 1-6 committee and the grand jury. They weren't your friends. Maybe it was someone closer. Who could it be? Someone you trusted. Betrayed. Now you're the first president to have his home raided by the FBI. This is your legacy. It's bad, Donald. Your father would be ashamed. And there's no one you can trust. No one. No one at all. There never was.
Rick, it's my understanding that Trump World was nervous that LP was going to give him the LP treatment and goad him into doing something crazy. And
yes,
looks like we are living up to our reputation.
And we are just living the dream. Donald's over on Truth Social saying that we changed our names. Bitch, we've been here all along. You can't kill us. Come at me, bro. God, you know what? This is the kind of thing where you wait for the moment where the bad guys start making mistakes because you goad them into it. And yes, Donald, please come up and fight.
Well, it's not been a great week for him. And speaking of Florida, we have a special guest tonight coming up in a couple
You're gonna
minutes. Yeah, Andrew Warren, who was the prosecutor down there that's gotten into a little bit of a tiff with Ron DeSantis.
With Donald Trump's mini-me.
Yes, he suspended him for just speaking the truth and doing his job. So Andrew's going to be here with us in a couple minutes after we get through some of these headlines. And we're going to talk a little more about Florida. And since he was a federal prosecutor, he understands also what else is going on. So stay tuned for Andrew Warren. He'll be with us in a minute. We have another headline, and this one is a little more somber, because the rhetoric that has come out of the right and the ecosphere over there, the Fox Newses and the Newsmax and all of these jerk offs over there on the right, has just been so irresponsible this week, going after the FBI and law enforcement. And we've heard threats. We've heard, we've reports of the increase in threats online, not since January 6th that they've seen this. They're going after the judge who signed off on the warrant, Eric Swalwell, cut his kids' heads off and stuff. Like it is just insane. And here's a little preview in case you don't watch those other channels, because I can only stomach about 30 seconds of it a day, if that. If you don't watch it like we don't, here we are. We're going to just show you a little clip of what's going on the other side.
We have the raid of a former president's home in America.
This is what happens in the banana republic.
You've taken the greatest country that gave you more opportunities, and you've turned it into the Gestapo.
This is Gestapo crap.
This is some third world bullshit.
Third world tactics worthy of Venezuela,
Colombia,
Communist Cuba,
the East German Stasi.
What is this, the Soviet Union?
The Constitution, as a working document, has ceased to exist.
My father always kept clippings,
Photographs,
newspaper articles.
These are documents that he's allowed to take from the White House.
The president, in effect, checked out books too long from the archivist.
Trump promised to drain the swamp, gets raided.
It's a threat because they don't want him to expose the pedophiles.
They get a sick sexual thrill from trying to lock up Republicans. This is the deep state's revenge.
Christopher Wray is as much a part of the deep state as the rest of them.
Wray needs to be fired.
This is only about the FBI going after Biden's political enemies.
The facts are that Hillary Clinton deleted 33,000 emails.
33,000 emails.
Hillary smashed iPhones with hammers.
Why does George Soros get away with everything he's doing?
Wherever you are hiding, Barack Obama, we see your hands behind it all.
Everything they've accused that family of, the former first family of, it seems like it's the Bidens that have done it.
What was on the warrant? What were you really doing?
I'm concerned that they may have planted something. And I don't necessarily think that they would even go to the extent of trying to plant information. I think they just make stuff up.
I wouldn't be surprised also if they planted bugs.
What happened in Mar-a-Lago is directly connected to the victims of January 6th.
If the FBI can do this to President Donald Trump, they can do it to you.
If it can happen to him, Sean, what about me and you?
Think about what they could do to every American.
They will go after each and every one of us if they can.
They're coming for you with the full force of the federal government.
I do not think it's beyond this administrative state and their deep state apparatus to actually try to work on the assassination of President Trump.
This wouldn't be happening if President Trump was still in office.
It is comical on one level, Tara, but it's also tragic because we had this guy, Ricky Schifrin, or something like that, in Ohio today, who went armed to an FBI office in Ohio.
In Cincinnati.
And died in a shootout.
Yep.
You know why? Because those assholes, those idiots on Newsmax and Fox and OAN and in the whole Trump ecosystem fed him a gigantic lie, another big lie, and he got so worked up and so torqued up that he went out there with a gun and went to the FBI office. How do you think that's going to end?
We know how it ends. He died.
Yeah.
He was shot and lost his life over it. And this is a guy who was also at January 6th. Now, it's a breaking news story. It's happening as we speak now. Details are coming in, so we're not sure what his motive was. But I think we're going to find out that, after you hear this and listen to this, and people telling you that the FBI, defund the FBI, which is the new line now of jerks like Marjorie Taylor Greene and the rest of them, these hypocrites, the same people who went after the left for defund the police justifiably. Right. These people now are turning around and saying defund the FBI, going after law enforcement. I don't hear any of the leaders in the Republican Party condemning that type of rhetoric. It's dangerous. And here you have more blood on their hands for this. And it's not going to end there. This is what they did. This is what they do. They stir it up. And what the fuck do they think is going to happen when they get these people out here indoctrinating them with the government's the bad guy and they're coming to get you and you can't have any law and order because they're all part of the deep state? This is what happens. It's not the first time.
It is. This talk of civil war is going to get a lot of their people killed.
Yes.
A lot of their people are going to die if they keep this civil war talk up.
Mm-hmm. Or in jail, or go to jail, and which is what happened on January 6th. But clearly, they haven't learned.
Correct.
Well, speaking of all of that, more breaking news today. Merrick Garland, the AG finally
Dark Merrick Garland.
Yes. He's such a big, scary guy, that Merrick Garland. No, Merrick Garland is very measured. A lot of people didn't think that he had the cojones to move forward aggressively. But you know what? The DOJ is doing exactly what we've asked them to do, and they're starting to pick up the pace. Now, why didn't Merrick Garland come out and say anything today? There's been a lot of talk. We talked about this with Harry on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Should the DOJ say something? Well, it reached the point of critical mass because Donald Trump and his minions have been running their mouths, saying all kinds of crazy lies and stuff that's not true, that it basically forced the DOJ's hand to come out and say something. But here's the genius of it, Rick. It's such a brilliant chess move. People talk about Trump does, 8-dimensional chess or whatever. No, he doesn't. But Merrick Garland did a hell of a chess move today, because what they did was not only did he come out and finally say, okay, listen, this was a legally executed search warrant signed off by a judge. There was probable cause that there was a crime being committed. And you know what? We're going to request that it's unsealed. We can't unseal it unless the judge says so. So We're going to request that a judge unseal the warrant. And Donald Trump has until tomorrow to either object to that or not, but it doesn't matter because it's really up to the court. He can object and a judge can overrule it. So this put the ball in Trump's court. What's he going to do? He's been bitching and complaining about how illegal this was, and because it's the Gestapo and all this rhetoric. But here, let the court and the documents speak for themselves. So we're going to find out exactly within a couple of days what the hell this was all about. Mostly, we'll have an idea. Thank God.
Tara, I will say this. The bluff calling today of Garland was magnificent, because the right had spent an awful lot of yesterday and today revving themselves into a frenzy, saying, "Oh, this is they're hiding everything. They won't even tell." It's over to you, Donald.
Yeah.
So it's all yours now, bro. So
Rick, you made a comment this week about how Merrick Garland's a guy who's probably never said "hold my beer."
Right.
Well, I think he said that this week. since Monday to today, I think he finally said that's it.
I think he finally said "hold my beer."
Yeah, no, I think he said "hold my chamomile tea," because he's such a measured guy. But I'm here for it, and this is the way he should have handled it, and I'm glad to see that. So there's that. The other thing that happened this week, before we bring in Andrew Warren, which is just glorious. So we all know that while the search was happening in Mar-a-Lago Monday, Trump was in New York City preparing for a deposition with the New York State Attorney General, Letitia James. And this is in that civil case that he's being accused of misrepresenting his finances and insurance claims and taxes.
Which
and all
seems
that.
so small ball now, doesn't it?
I know. Like, good Lord. Let's pick from which tentacle of criming Donald Trump is involved in this week. But this is a civil case nonetheless. But this is also where they were held up in contempt of court because they weren't cooperating with coming in. And finally, they said, fine, we'll do it. Well, come to find out, he ended up pleading the fifth. Not once, not twice, not 100 times.
How many times was it, Tara?
440 times he pled the fifth. 440. He is at the top of the pleading the fifth leaderboard right here by a measure of 4 times.
And I was wondering how many times Hillary Clinton pled the fifth during the Benghazi hearings. Do you have a recollection of that, Tara?
I do, since I was on Capitol Hill when that happened, and it was 0.
The goose egg.
0.
The goose egg.
Say what you want. Say what you want about Hillary. She sat there for 12 hours
and took
it. And so she was definitely on somebody's chamomile tea or something else to keep her calm through that whole thing, because she never lost it once. And, she made them all look like fools when she's like, okay, what else you got for me?
Listen, if I had to deal with Jim Jordan for all that time, I'd have to have like a pound of Xanax.
I know. Oh my God. But listen,
now in industrial strength.
Benghazi was a serious thing, and people died. And not to minimize Benghazi, that was a very serious screw up on the part of the Department of Justice and others.
Question.
But the idea that it was some type of like grand scheme that Hillary Clinton
deep state conspiracy, blah blah blah,
turned out not to be true. So, but anyway, so Donald Trump pled the fifth 440 times this week, which if I recollect correctly, didn't he accuse anyone during 2016?
Why yes, he did.
He was guilty. Anyone who pleads the fifth is guilty.
It's what the mob does. If you say you plead the fifth, you're obviously guilty.
Right. Yeah. Well, what does that say about him?
Yeah.
Ay, ay, ay. All right. So I think we're all caught up on the crime.
It does remind one thing, just one super quick aside. It should remind people that the Donald Trump may be a buffoon and a clown, but he has a certain feral sense of self-protection.
That's true.
And at that moment, he said, "Oh, I can't truth my way out of this. I can't BS my way out of this. I can't go on Newsmax and say, oh, they're being mean to me." He recognized at that moment he had to actually play on the real field of battle.
That's right. And, George Conway tweeted out that,
who is in fuego the last 5 days.
He has been. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you need to. He joked and he said, I have to give him credit. This is the first time he's actually respected the Constitution. I was like, touche. Oh, one more person. You know who hasn't respected the Constitution and didn't show up for court? Lady Lindsay.
Lady Lindsay of Omaha. Yeah.
Oh, I wonder what's going to happen with him. He's another one that's out there.
Yeah. Yes.
With this nonsense.
How shocking you would see Lindsey Graham defying a subpoena, who poses as this very judicious Solon of Washington.
He was a JAG officer.
Yes, he was. Mostly in the off direction. I had to. State and federal law required that I make that joke.
And bring in our other Florida man.
Let us do that.
Let's do that. Tonight's guest is Andrew Warren. He's a former federal prosecutor and a state attorney in Florida, which is an elected position that he won twice, overwhelmingly. But apparently, Ron DeSantis doesn't like him doing his job and suspended him, tried to make a political spectacle of all of this. And we are thrilled to have Andrew with us on the show
tonight to talk about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I got to tell you though, the first time I was elected, it was pretty close. The second time,
we'll have them work on grabbing him. We were talking. He's here. Trust me. We were talking to him before the show started.
I can hear him, Tara. All right, I think we're having some Tara problems. So Andrew, let's go ahead. The first time it was a little closer than the second time, but you were a popular elected state attorney in Tampa, and you were in a situation where you spoke out on something that Ron DeSantis found offensive. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so last Thursday, I was sitting in my office. I was overseeing a grand jury investigation. We were actually looking into 2 cold cases that we had solved with the help of local law enforcement, charged 2 men with these heinous rape and murders from nearly 40 years ago.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, I got an email that I was being suspended. I walked out of the grand jury to see what was going on. I went up to my office, and 2 minutes later, knock on my door. And there was an armed deputy and someone from the governor's office telling me it was time to go. I'd been suspended and I needed to leave immediately. I was forced out of my office, no warning on this, no time to read the order, no time to grab my things, no time to talk with my staff, just kicked out. And I'm the twice elected state attorney. I've been a federal prosecutor, spent my career locking up bad guys. If they can do this to me, what can they do to you?
Sure. I mean, that was something that when this happened, I was struck by the arbitrary and sort of authoritarian nature of this. And it's interesting to see that Ron DeSantis is using his quite enormous political power in Florida because you had you varied with him on a matter of ideological preference, not over some sort of malfeasance. I mean, the governors had the power. And as most governors have exercised it at some level or another, if a judge or a state attorney or a state official of any kind is corrupt or engaged in malfeasance. But tell us a little bit more about why he put you in his sights.
Well, the main arguments was because I was speaking out on issues. I mean, this has been an attack on free speech. I had signed on to 2 letters with prosecutors from all over the country talking about 2 issues, abortion and transgender rights, which are just pet culture war issues for the governor. And he didn't like that I had said that I don't think these laws should be passed, that these laws potentially violate people's constitutional rights. And he came out and basically said, well, Andrew's not going to enforce the law on these. Let's keep in mind for a moment that one of those laws, the 15-week abortion ban in Florida, has been held unconstitutional by the only judge who's looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other law isn't even on the books yet. But I was suspended from my job for not enforcing laws that aren't valid and aren't on the books. It's like being accused of robbing a bank and having, them being told, well, you didn't take any money and the bank doesn't exist.
Right. They haven't even built the bank yet.
Yeah,
but
but
yeah,
we're pretty sure that you're going to rob it when we build it.
Now, Andrew, so there is a process in Florida where you get to basically the state legislature, the state Senate will look at the case. Is that correct? So there's an appeal process in the state side, but there's also the potential you could challenge this legally, correct?
Correct. And that's what we intend to do. I mean, we're going to fight back against this. It's an illegal order. I mean, there's no legal basis to throw me out of office for this. I mean, and we have to take a step back because there's been a lot of people who've come to my side and so much support, and I'm humbled by it. But this isn't about me. This isn't about one elected official being removed from office. This is about a governor who thinks he has the ability to overthrow an election, to nullify people's votes, to say, well, I know this community, which is, by the way, in Tampa Bay area, Hillsborough County, this is a purple jurisdiction, and a pretty moderate prosecutor here. But to say, even though the voters put him in because they trust my judgment, they share my vision, and we can talk about this later. I mean, crime is low here, but even though the voters have agreed with me and want me in office, the governor says, I don't like the way he's doing his job, so I'm just going to take him out of office. I mean, that should send chills down the spine of not just every elected official in Florida, not just every candidate for office, but every voter. If you care about your votes mattering, if you care about the integrity of elections and democracy, it's really hard to overstate how big of a threat this is to not just free speech, but the right to vote in elections.
But they sent a person from the governor's office to do this. I mean, he clearly signed off on this personally. Well, is it? Can you identify the person who came down to throw you out of the office?
He was about yay tall. He's wearing a suit. That's really
okay.
He introduced himself. I don't remember his name.
Got it. I understand. Well, I'm sure in the legal process you will discover exactly who this person was.
Yeah. It was so lightning fast again. I mean, it was, you need to leave now. You can't get your stuff. You can't talk, just totally blindsided by it. But clearly it's something that the governor and his accomplices have been orchestrating for days, if not weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I have to imagine that that you are not, you may be the first, but you are certainly not going to be the last if he gets away with this. And I will say this, when you were fired, there was still an argument that Ron DeSantis had a 2024 presidential campaign in the offing. I think it probably doesn't exist in the way it did now that Donald Trump's edging towards getting in, but he is going to clearly abuse his power as governor. I mean, you are patient zero of how he's going to abuse that power. I think we have Tara back with us.
I am. I'm back. I apologize.
The adult supervision's back in the room, Andrew.
I'll be on my best behavior now. I mean,
I won't. I never am.
You're exactly right in terms of how unprecedented this is to be patient zero. But look at what the governor has done over the past year. I mean, if you speak out in a way that he disagrees with, you are at risk. First, it was businesses with Disney, and he's made comments about going after other businesses. Then it was teachers. I mean, teachers are barred from talking with their students about issues. And now an elected official. I mean, the question that Floridians need to be asking themselves is, who's next? Who's next if they say something that King Ron DeSantis disapproves of?
It's so true. I mean, it's interesting because I tweeted about your story the other day, and a teacher reached out to me and she said, I keep about 200 books in my classroom for my middle school kids. And I was told by the school administrator that the governor has a list at the Department of Education, and if any of those books are on the list, I have to remove them. And she said, can I see the list? They said, no, but if it's got black stuff or gay stuff, they have to go. And this is the arbitrary execution of power at every level. And you're in a prominent position where what you said, and because of the work you do, keeping the Tampa Bay area safe, you're a prominent person, so you've got a target on your back automatically. But
Right.
they're looking at this as a stochastic terrorism plan to go all the way down and all the way up the chain of people that disagree with him in elected positions.
Welcome to the so-called free state of Florida.
Yeah.
I have a question because we had some people that have sent in comments asking, A, how can they support you? But B, the idea that their vote for you was taken away by Ron DeSantis's action, I think is pretty rich, coming from the party that claims that there was all this voter fraud and they're disenfranchising their voters, when that's exactly what Ron DeSantis is doing to you in this extrajudicial way of coming after you because he doesn't agree with what you're doing in an elected position. I think that's very scary. So we have a lot of people from Florida who watch the show. What do you say to them when they say, well, what can we do? What's the recourse here?
Well, I said, we're going to challenge this in court, and we're going to fight this, and we're going to fight it vigorously. And it's going to be with a defense of democracy, a defense of people's right to vote, a defense of the fact that elections matter and freedom still exists in our country, in our state. I mean, so I'll happily answer the first question. People can come, join us in that fight at andrewwarrenfl.com, andrewwarrenfl.com. But this is something that should outrage everybody. I got a call from someone said, I didn't vote for you. I'm not sure I'd even vote for her next time, but this is ridiculous. Right. And that's right. I mean, we've heard people talk about for the past couple of years, a stolen election in the country. And we know that there's no facts behind that, but it's showing that people really care about democracy. They want to know that their vote counts. This is the one thing that unites us at a time when our politics are so partisan. We're so divided in this country. We fight over, the color of the sky now. But the thing that should unite us still is our love of country, the core values in democracy. And people on both the left and right, red and blue, purple, Republican, Democrat, Independent, should all be on board with the fact that your vote matters. Elections matter. And the people who are put into office by the voters get to serve in those positions until the voters, the people, not the governor, not the president, not the king, the people decide that person should no longer serve in office.
Amen to that. Well, speaking of the king or wannabe, let's talk a little Trump, because I know that you've prosecuted really high-level white-collar crime, including like a $7 billion Ponzi scheme, which is nothing to sneeze at. So you're familiar with Ponzi schemes and frauds and con artists. So when you look at what's happening with Donald Trump, what's your take on the criminal liability that he's facing here, whether it's in New York with what we were just talking about earlier and his 440 take the fifths, or just in general? When you look at this, what do you think Trump's biggest criminal liability is here?
Well, first of all, when there's smoke, there's fire. And there's a lot of smoke here. You have investigations potentially in New York, right? And maybe in Georgia, and the feds are looking into it. And I'll tell you from my background as a Fed, even though in the last few years, the Department of Justice and the FBI have become politicized in the minds of many, these are professionals. These are men and women. They don't care about who's in charge in terms of the red or blue Republican, Democrat. They are all about doing their job. These are Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts who are there to defend the Constitution, to uphold the rule of law, and they don't care anyone's political party or anything like that. If you did something wrong, they're going to investigate it and they're going to try to bring you to justice. And so obviously we can't speculate about exactly what DOJ's case is, but the fact that they're taking a methodical approach to this, like Rick said before, that Merrick Garland is prepared for all of this, they're not flying by the seat of their pants on this one. I mean, they know what they're doing. And I'll tell you, when I was on that side of it, if you had that knock on your door at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the Fed showed up, you should, oh, come on, these guys are just no, you should be worried and go call a lawyer right away. And look, that's what Trump did.
It's going to be fun. It's going to get loud.
It is. The other thing about this, and a lot of people think, Ron DeSantis and the folks in Florida, they had to be tipped off. They had to know that this was happening ahead of time. And, there's a lot of people like to talk because they don't know what goes on. What's the likelihood that DeSantis or any of his people knew what was happening? I think it's -0, like -100. But just explain to people how that would normally go down? I mean, we've never had it happen with a president before, but would the feds notify the governor of a high profile search warrant like that? I would suspect no.
No, I mean, so the case that you mentioned before was the case of Alan Stanford. He ran the second largest Ponzi scheme in history, and actually the largest fraud trial in American history, because Madoff didn't go to trial.
Right.
So I'm proud that I got to prosecute that case when I was at DOJ. But in that situation, Stanford was a flight risk, guide private planes and citizenship in other countries. We didn't tell anyone, right? We know we're going to get him. We get the warrant for his arrest after the indictment. We figure out where he is. We'll keep it very under wrap, under lock and key. Federal agents figure out where he is and put eyes on him. And then all of a sudden they swarm and show up. Now, this is different. They weren't arresting him. They're executing a search warrant. And it's not like Mar-a-Lago is going anywhere. I mean, whether Trump's there or not, the building's there and they're going to show up with a warrant and they're going to get what they need. But given how high profile this is, I can only imagine that they kept it very tightly under wraps to make sure that there was no tip-off, there were no questions about it beforehand. And they want to do this by the book. I mean, as you were talking about earlier, you can't release the warrant without judicial oversight. And brilliant move by the Attorney General to say, oh, you're talking about show the warrant? Okay, so we'll move to unseal it.
Right.
But you don't want to do anything in this scenario where you can be accused of anything improper. And the feds play it by the book. Again, these are Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, the prototype.
Absolutely. And Merrick Garland
Completely.
definitely plays it by the book. I mean, it doesn't get any more by the book than Merrick Garland, much to the chagrin of a lot of people who wished he was more aggressive. So, well, here he is. And now they're, complaining about that too. It's crazy to me, but we're hearing more about, who signed off on that warrant. And it looks like it was Jay Bratt, who is the head of the Counterintelligence and Export Control Division of the DOJ, which I cannot emphasize this enough because I don't think it gets enough play in the media when they're explaining this, because some people are just trying to, oh, it's just the Presidential Records Act, or, oh, he just mishandled a couple of documents. It's the Kim Jong-un love letters. Who cares? No. Okay. This division is, as you know, Andrew, this division handles national security. It handles military technology and exports. It handles espionage. It handles foreign relations. It handles really, really high level, serious stuff. And so it's more than just a couple of classified documents like, the plans to Air Force One. I think this is very significant, which is, why someone decided to tip off the feds, and they went down there and said, okay, finally, we've been trying to work with you and you're not listening.
Right.
And the gentleman that you named, the head of the division, right? I'm sure he's a super deep state guy who's just in this for the politics. I mean, it's crazy. Like I was at the Justice Department first under George W. Bush and then under Barack Obama's administrations with different attorneys general, with different heads of assistant attorneys general and section heads. And when those leadership positions change, the men and women who work there go, okay, back to work the next day. Like my job doesn't change, because the president changes. We're still doing the work.
Right.
We're still going out investigating and prosecuting bad guys. That's what you do there. The politics are so far removed from the day-to-day of the FBI agents and the line prosecutors and even the supervisors who are signing off on this.
Right.
I think that's important for people to know and emphasize that, because it's insulting to the men and women who do their jobs without fear or favor. And it's, everyone knows I'm a law enforcement person. So when law enforcement's attacked, I take issue with it. And I think it's not right. Rick, I think you want to ask a couple questions maybe about the politics in Florida, since we have a primary.
I think Andrew, one of the things I'm really keeping an eye on is just how politicized the legislature is about to become to sort of pursue DeSantis, his agenda. Are you so obviously you're going to pursue this in court, but you will have a day in the Florida legislature in the Senate where they review this case. Are you sanguine about that part of the process, or do you think? I think that's not going to go smoothly. I think those guys are pretty much in the sack for DeSantis as a rule. But have you started talking to those folks? Is there a process in place there yet?
There's not yet. So the Senate president has the, not just the authority, he's required within 90 days to set out the process for this. And the Senate has to have a trial before the end of the next legislative session. And in Florida, that's next year. It's going to be in March. So in theory, this could go to March through May. Now we anticipate and we expect, because of the strength of our argument, that a court of law throws this out well before then. But understand, if it went that far, if it got to the Senate, politics are political, and the men and women in the Senate are, have their own political things to worry about and the governor's wrath against them. But again, this is something that's not popular with 60-70% of people. I mean, you have people frankly on both sides, right, that would never look at the facts. They'd probably just see the D after one person's name, the R after another person's name. And no matter what, they're going to side with that because they're true believers. But most of America is in the middle somewhere and able to look at the facts. And I have confidence. I have faith in our state and in our country still that the people who are evaluating what happened will recognize this, as I said before, as the existential threat to democracy that it is, and that the governor shouldn't get to just kick elected officials out of office and nullify people's vote.
Absolutely. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It was great. We will be in touch more in the future, and next time I'm down in my hometown of Tampa, we will go and have a dinner. So
sounds good.
Thank you again, and best of luck with everything, and keep standing up for what's right.
I will indeed. Rick, Tara, thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. 10 years ago on this day, I was in your town of Tampa at the Republican National Convention.
So was I.
When Mitt Romney named Paul Ryan as his running mate.
And you and I and people like us were like, yeah.
Oh my God. I saw my Facebook come up and say where I was thrilled that Romney picked Ryan because, that was back in the before times when we thought there was...
Yes. Now he's Fox News board member, Paul Ryan.
So disappointing. He knows better. Come on, Paul. Anyway.
Well, listen, folks, we're gonna wrap it up for tonight. I've got a little bit of curb stomping to do with Donald Trump, who has gone completely ham on Twitter. I mean, excuse me, not on Twitter, because you've been thrown off Twitter, bitch. On Truth Social. And we look forward to seeing you guys again next Tuesday.
And in the immortal words of the political philosopher Britney Spears, we drive him crazy.
Yes, we do.
Crazy. Anyway, all right, guys, that's it for us.
Good night, folks.
See you next week on Tuesday as usual. Have a great night.